Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dream Leapers with Harriet Cole. I am so excited for today's guest. We've been talking about having her on the show for quite some time. I have been inspired by her for years. She is visual artist extraordinaire, world-renowned visual artist. Her name is Mickalene Thomas. Her work appears in galleries and museums all over the world, including Museum of Modern Art and Brooklyn Museum, which is the first time that I saw her work in a museum. She's a multimedia artist who uses photography, painting, collage, drawing, film, and installation to share her practice with the world. She is a graduate of Pratt Institute and Yale University. She has a show up at Yale right now. She's got shows all over. And we're going to talk about her work and what it means and her celebration of Black women, just her love of Black women and the way that she celebrates them that makes me feel good. And I hope it will make you feel good too. Please join me in welcoming Mickalene Thomas.
Hello.
Hey,
Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
I am excited
Yeah.
too. Mickalene, I was just trying to figure out
What was you
when
trying to figure out?
when I first knew your work. And so it's not Brooklyn Museum. That's when I saw it big. But I
Mm-hmm.
remember from the Studio Museum in Harlem when you were doing the Artist in Residence program, which what year was that?
Oh, that was 2002. Yeah, 2002.
2002. That is many moons ago. The Studio Museum in Harlem Artist in Residence program. I love
Mm-hmm.
that program because it creates these small cohorts of artists, gives them the opportunity to just create. And so
Yeah.
many incredible artists have come out of that program. What did it mean for you at that time? Because that's many years ago now.
Oh my gosh, it meant everything. Because you heard the legacy. First of all, let's just talk about the legacy of Studio Museum in Harlem. There's so many incredible artists, that went through there, and it was this hub that you learned about as a young African American artist. And so, while I was a student at Yale University, I was a graduate student. My good friend, artist, brother, supporter in many ways, Kehinde Wiley, had got in, and so. He was telling me so much about it, and it just sounded incredible. And I would go and visit him and see what he was doing, and just looking at the community that it had, that it built around and for Black artists, and not only as makers, but as contributors to the market, right? And so seeing that look like a direct trajectory for me on sort of the next level that I thought was possible to move toward. And he encouraged me to apply for the next year. He said, "I think you should apply for this program." And it was great. And I was there with Lewis Cameron and Deborah Grant. And I couldn't have asked to be with a better cohort of artists, to be quite honest. They were already well established in their career. I was just coming out of graduate school, so I hadn't, up until that point, had any shows or galleries or any interest. I was just still very fresh and new, right. And just trying to figure it out, and nervous, and not really certain about the future, and just looking at their career as a model, as a mirror image, and seeing what they were doing. Really helped me to know what it is I wanted and how I would sort of, pave out my own sort of direction. How would I do it? And not that they were doing it wrong. I think you can look at other people and see what you want to do and what you don't want to do.
Sure.
And so that was really good. But also, Thelma Golden as the at the time when I was there, she was the curator, and
right under Lowry Sims. Lowry,
yep,
right.
Under Lowry Stokes Sims. She was the director. So having her as your advocate was immeasurable. you know what I mean? And just the conversations she had with you around about your work, the people she brought to you, the expectation that they required really allowed you to sort of expand and open and, think about what you were doing and how you wanted to go about it. And so I really appreciate that. And, Christine Kim was there as well. There was just, and all these incredible um, artists were coming through and talking to you about your work. And it was a really great way for me to gauge my audience, right? It was a really safe space, I should say, to gauge my audience without um, fear, without not criticism. I wasn't necessarily cared. I could care less because that would come, but it really helped me to things I was thinking about, put it out there and see what how that conversation would develop. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Which was testing that in that particular space was so incredibly rewarding.
And to come right out of grad school,
Hmm.
the incubator, you were developing your artistry. Now, when you were at Yale, is that when you began the work of photographing and creating art around your mother?
Yeah, yeah, I would say it was through a photo class that I did with David Hilliard,
Mhm.
incredible photographer. He actually is a photographer that works from the personal and use a lot of his personal narrative experiences to tell his story through his photographic, works. And a lot of that is the dynamic and relationship he has between his father as a queer white man from Boston and what that means and what that looks like in their relationship of how it developed over time. And so he used photography as a tool to express those feelings and to make dynamic images. Um, and so I think because that was a way in which he worked, he used that as a platform to get us as artists, young professional artists, to tell our own stories. And one he did for me was like, find someone in your life that you want reconciliation with and use this as a tool. And at that time, it was my mother.
And
Um,
so powerful. A lot your work really explores identity, uh, so much around relationships with women and celebration of women and the claiming of
mhm.
Black female identity. And
Yes.
as you have described, the mother is the ultimate of female identity for Black folks, the
Oh,
ultimate Black
yeah.
female. And your mama
My
was
mama, but
here.
also
She
all the
was
mamas
here.
in my family. My not my It
Yes.
was like my mama's mama, my mama's mama's mama, my mama's mama's mama, mama, mama,
These
But
are fierce women.
there were fierce women, but like even my grandmother, Elizabeth Mary Bostick was one of those women. She was a missionary, church-going woman, but she was steadfast, unstoppable, fierce, stylish, warm, generous, uh, like leader. She conducted the choir. She and my grandfather, they had churches that they would go throughout the South. They were from Muskegon, Muskegon, Michigan. Um, and so they would travel throughout, that area up until they came to Philadelphia and down to Camden, building church and singing choir. And so my mother grew up in that, and she grew up, they used to be called the burning bushes. So there was like this, growing up around that and seeing, and the women were always the ones who were the leaders in my family. And so um, I always look to that. I always look to Black women and sort of their vulnerability and their strength.
And I remember speaking with you about your mom and the fact that as a young woman, having her as your muse, and
Mm,
this was a relationship that you were looking to heal, your mother openly shared not just her vulnerability, but her hotness, her sexuality, her
yeah.
sensuality, which can be a really tough thing for a mother to show a daughter and to for her to trust you and vice versa. What it how, can you take us into that experience?
Yeah. I mean, that experience was quite rare, I would say. Um, because my mother was always one of the type of people to be open in conversations with me and my brother. But, growing up with the type of mother I had was very challenging because she was very beautiful and had this magnetism where people would draw into her. And so as a child, I didn't look like her, and people would often mistaken my cousin for her child and not me. So that kind of left. So I had a real understanding of the dynamics of uh, beauty and body modification at a very young age because it was always pointed out to me that I looked different. Society told me that. Like my family didn't, but other people who weren't in the media family told me that. So there was
How
this,
did that make you feel?
oh my gosh, it made me feel. I mean, at first, how like when you first hear it, you're like, okay, they just don't know. But when you hear it quite often, you're like, okay, then something must be wrong. Like as a child, you're like, okay, what did I do, and why don't I look like her?
Mm.
You know what I mean? Um, and
And
so the so
that
the
people were saying they were calling her beautiful, but
yeah,
they
yeah,
weren't necessarily calling you
exact
beautiful.
exactly. So they would look. They're like, oh, like we would be in places, and my mother, she was 6'1", and
Wow.
me as this young child, even if I was 8, I was already like probably like 5'3" because I was very tall, you know, and they were like, "Oh, this is your." My mother were like, "Oh, this is my daughter," and they were like, they would do that like head thing, like kind of like they're trying to see her in me.
Right.
You know what I mean? And they would squint. They were like, "Oh, okay, yeah, oh yeah,
Come on.
oh yeah," but they never said or described an elation of something or adjective of desire. You know what I mean? They never said, "Oh, beautiful." I mean, I would have taken cute. I didn't even get that.
Right. Give me something, man.
Give me something. So
But then
grown.
fast forward
Yep.
when you're making art with your mother,
Mm-hmm.
she trusting you. She is revealing everything
Mm-hmm.
to you.
Unapologetically revealing
Right.
everything,
What
which
did
is
that
like
do for you?
that gave me strength. That gave me permission. That gave me the own self reflection and desire to be confident and to show my own sort of sensuality and not be afraid of that, not be afraid of how that might sort of oscillate between sort of modes of construct that I'm interested in, which is masculinity and femininity,
Mhm.
like allows me to just stand in my truth. Um, because she was so much a pillar of her own self awareness, so much that she recognized who she was because people were telling her, but she didn't need them to tell her. She knew
It,
that.
it was
You
from
know,
inside
it
out.
was from inside out, absolutely. So she didn't need anyone to define her. You know, she knew that and she carried herself that way. So when she walked into a room, like often say there's like walk into a room, be the light. She was always the light. She was always, my mother could sit in a room, sit in a chair or a couch at a party by herself, and she would be surrounded by people and not say anything.
I love it. Hey guys, this is Dream Leapers with Harriet Cole. I am so excited. We are talking to Mickalene Thomas. She is a world renowned artist. She's done every kind of work from
Yeah.
photography to collage to films, installation.
Yeah.
Just all kinds of
I
work.
try, I try to dabble in stuff here and
You're
there,
so
sort of
good.
break the mold and be unpredictable and not like let people box you in and make you feel like you are one thing.
I
You're
mean,
multifaceted.
to that point, like just very recently, you were doing a photo shoot for New York Times with Oprah and
Oh
others,
yeah. Oh
right?
yeah.
And then the Dior. You've done a couple things, I think, with Dior, but when
Yeah, my Dior bags,
the
and
Dior
I
bag,
got it. I
oh,
just did
the
another
whole
spread that
thing,
I can't speak about, but a
yeah,
fantastic collaboration with a filmmaker and incredible actress that's coming out.
you're having fun.
I'm having fun. I'm living my best life. As
Best.
Bevy Smith says, it gets greater later, and that is the
Yeah.
truth. It totally gets greater later, and I feel blessed and highly favored that I'm able to be in a position to wake up and do what I do. Even though look, I'm not gonna sit here and have this conversation like it's not met with its challenges. It's hard, but it's because of those obstacles and challenges that allows me to persevere and push through because I have a mission and vision of where I want to be and what things look like for me and what I want my legacy to be when I'm no longer here so that it can speak for itself. And my daughter, hopefully, and my family members can carry on the torch, whoever's left.
Which is powerful. Having a vision and a mission, that is so important in
Mm-hmm.
order to when you look at the year ahead and however
Yeah.
many years ahead, if you don't have a plan, usually
Yeah.
nothing happens. We know so much has happened in your world.
Yeah.
Your work, Mickalene, celebrates Black women
Mm.
in so many ways. And I was going through looking at many pieces in
Yeah.
particular in your book that is your name, this big
Mm-hmm.
Faidon book. And I the we just talked about the sensuality that is very
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the style, not just the style of the physical woman, but the hair, the environment, what makes these women uniquely who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And even in the sensuality, what I appreciated at this time of looking was it's sensual, but it's not
Yeah.
cheap. It's
Mm.
not
Mm-hmm.
graphic. Some of it is like, woo, you take us right there, but it doesn't feel pornographic. And it's just feels so much more beautiful than.
Yeah.
And so what is your process of revealing, going in so deeply and revealing that sensual side of Black women?
I think it's just looking, and first is like my love for Black women,
Hmm.
you know, and so many ways because I just think we're just so fucking strong and fierce, and we can do many things. And I have to look at Black women to discover myself and who I am. And sometimes it's not even people that I know. It's just like when I think of someone like Shonda Rhimes or someone like Tina Turner or Toni Morrison. Some of these people I've never met, but I look at their lives and how they lived and how they persevered, their challenges that make me understand I too can be that.
Mm.
And so I think when I'm wanting to celebrate women and bringing sort of that sort of dynamic strength and prowess, that sort of complexity of those combinations to in one, I'm looking at those women who personify that in
Mm.
the day to day. That's where I seek. It's kind of like an energy. It's like if I don't feel that from you, then I don't know if I can bring that out of you. You know, like we have to have this magnetism, this connection where I kind of like, oh, I feel something from them. This person is giving me something that I can't fully define, but I'm going to try to see if I can, with the tools that I'm using, bring that out in a way to create impact for other people to see what I'm seeing. That's all I'm trying to do. It's just like I see and feel something here that this person harbors, and I only want to encapsulate that into my body of work, and hopefully that exudes through.
Mm-hmm.
that is penetratable, that inspires the viewer when they are looking at the work.
How do you choose your subjects? Because as you look at your body of work, there are lots of different.
Well, they've been different people. Some have been like, people that I met randomly, friends of another friend, are from Craigslist, are lovers, are cousins, are, family members. And, there's only it's interesting because there was one where people had this crazy myth that like they were my harems or my lovers and stuff. There were only two women in my body of work that I was involved with romantically, and we had long relationships, that are part of a series of works. All the other women have been friends, friends, like I stated before. They have not been intimate partners.
Mm-hmm.
So despite the rumors,
But
I'm
I could understand why people would have that question because it's such an intimate gaze, and
yeah, yeah,
many
yeah.
people have written about your work talk about the gaze,
Mm-hmm,
and then on top of just in general the gaze, the queer Black gaze.
mm-hmm.
What does that and your look into the soul and sensuality of these women? It's understandable that people would think, well, how could she get to that? She must have had, some kind of intimate.
Well, I think I told a friend that I had a friend who said to me that I allow people to let their guard down and feel comfortable. And I think that's just what it is. Because I'm comfortable with myself, I allow them to be comfortable with themselves and it's like dancing. When you get in that dance rhythm and you just fall and sync, you don't have to necessarily tell the person the next move. Whether I salsa dance or, I'm doing sort of a modern or jazz or whatever it may be, if you have with your partner that movement, you know, you
Mm-hmm.
just kind of it's a feeling. No one can say, oh, you got to do this. Yeah, you can do this and that, but it's also an energy. It's a movement, and it's the same way with working with someone else. I'm doing this. I'm moving. I'm swaying with them. And it's like I'm feeling their energy, and then I'm working with them. Sometimes things are happening when I'm shooting, and it's just so merely mystically about that energy and what's happening in that space. And it's words can't really define. It's just like you just feel it. You just go into the familiar, and you feel safe, and you sort of allow your guard down, and you feel free. It's freeing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what it is. And I take a lot of photographs. So people have to understand that when I get to that moment of the image that they see that's executed, there's probably like 30 or 40, 50, 60 photographs that I went through before I got to that, because I'm shooting a lot.
And
Because I'm shooting a lot because I want her to be comfortable.
don't you sometimes actually collage those photographs? So
Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
your imagination
So I'm
that
also taking several photographs and collaging them to make one, because
right.
there's elements from maybe her eyes from one is doing one thing, the way she's seated in another. And so I'm really editing and sort of co-opting from other images.
That's powerful. We talked a moment ago about your mother, and now, so I saw that beautiful film you made of her, and also the, art that you've made along the way. And now you do look like your mother.
I
You do look
know. I'm
like,
so happy about it.
yeah,
Yeah.
a
I'm
part.
I'm so happy about it. I saw my aunt on my father's side, and she was like, we were somewhere, and she just stared at me. She goes, "There you go, Sandra," and it's just like, it's great, because I actually now can look in the mirror, and my mother, she's no longer with us. She transitioned in 2012, but I feel like she's with me. And now when I look in the mirror, I see her and I see myself, and that just makes me so happy, you know?
How do you feel that you have evolved over this time, and what does that look like in your body of work? The evolution of Mickalene Thomas.
That's a good question. And I don't know if I can answer that like um, in a way that could really make sense, because I think my work organically evolves from itself, you know? And I think, you know, who I am today, I was not that person 10 years ago. So what that work looks like now, it looks rejuvenating, it looks fresh, it looks exciting, it looks sexy. Um, and it looks very confident. Um, and it looks fully aware of it being a badass. So I think what it looks like in the future is that it looks mature, it looks settled, it looks freed, it looks excited by the next journey. You know what I mean? It looks explorative and experimental and all those things.
Yeah.
That's what I hope, you know? And, you know, it's like, yeah, that's what I hope.
Oh, and I love that. So I have to say something that I love. As I was looking at this beautiful art book, Mickalene Thomas, in the very first essay written by a scholar, historian Roxanne Gay, she says, and you mentioned a moment ago that you're kind of dealing with your male and female energy.
Yeah.
She says you have big dick energy.
I know. She dropped the mic on me, and then it's forever in that book.
Woohoo! What does that mean to you, and how did you feel when you read that?
You know, I've heard that before from my male friends that say, and I don't know. I think that's why, I don't know. I grew up with, maybe it's because I was raised around brothers. I don't know. I think we all have. I think I have it in a way that is not like in people's face. It's a slow kind of rise. Sorry. But it's full and just, you know.
It's interesting in so many ways. So,
Yeah.
you know, if we just look at whatever that means to whoever's thinking about it.
Exactly, with whoever's thinking about it, because
But there's a
but I'm also very, you know, it's like, I love that that's what people get from me, because I can be very honest. There was a period in my life where I was not confident and very shy and insecure. So, but the fact that even during that time where I was feeling not confident, shy, and insecure, that people still got that energy from me. It's kind of interesting. So I can't explain that. I can't explain that duality, but it existed, you know, that it's just like, I'm the type of person that I don't give up. You see what I mean? Like, even when life is hard, I have a huge, immense sense of faith. So, like, when hardship hits me, I'll deal with it, I'll feel it, but I still move through it. I'm like one of those people that could be walking through the storm and like, girl, just get out the storm. It's like, no, I see the light on the other side. I see this little opening, and I still push through, even though I know it may be treacherous and hard and challenging. You know, I'm not afraid of that. I've never been afraid of that. And I think that's why I've been as successful as I am, coming from where I came from. Because, I mean, my story is my story like no other. And when I look back, it's like, yeah, I came from that girl from Camden, New Jersey, that girl from a single family home, you know what I mean? That girl who watched, you know, family members go in and out of incarceration, you know, and devastation of drugs and addiction, made a decision at a young age to get out. and no one told her to. She told herself to. You know what I mean? Like I told me to. So whatever that was is what I have inside that keeps me going.
That you were very young when you made the decision to leave.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
About how old?
I was 16, 15 going on 16.
Yeah, that was a career.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
went all the way across the country to,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
and I mean, and look at what happened. You're proof
Yeah.
that you can have hardship and tremendous success.
Yeah.
Which counts for a lot.
Yeah. And I didn't have someone during that time say, "Hey, you should do this." My life and my inner self told me that. Told me that there is something else out there for you. You need to leave if you want it.
And I mean, just look, and that sense of wonder, joy that you were seeking, even as you were in the midst of tremendous darkness, it shows up in your work. I mean, the materials that you use in your work, the sparkles, the stones, the colors, that doesn't speak to sadness or.
And I had for my new book that's coming out, speaking to the curator and historian who's bringing this show to the Hayward, Rachel Thomas, talk about like, I have to celebrate women because why talk? I mean, not that I'm pushing or sweeping under the carpet the trauma, is that there's so much to celebrate as well. You know what I mean? Like life has so much to celebrate. And it's so great when you inspire someone. It's the same way, like I saw Carrie Mae Weems the other night, and every time I see this woman, she gives me such joy and love in the same way as when I saw her work in Portland, Oregon. That transformed my life. You know what I mean?
Changed your life, right? This was from her kitchen table series.
Yes.
I remember when that first debuted, and it was just eye-opening in that it was real.
Yeah.
It was just, everybody knows the experience around the kitchen table.
The kitchen table, the family, the familial, the domestic setting, the relationship between mother and child and husband and wife, like all of those dynamics within Black life, But for me, up until that point, I didn't see those type of images.
Right.
Not only did I see it, I didn't know that you could make those type of images and have it be called art. Right. You know what I mean?
Sure. Absolutely. Now, I saw an interview that you did with your good friend Derek Adams, who's from my hometown, Baltimore.
Yeah.
And
BMO.
And we were talking about Black radical joy.
Oh, yes.
And looking at his work and looking at you, and you looked at the concept of leisure, and you showed a lot in your work of just Black women lounging and just.
Well, because a lot of us can't afford that. I mean, it's a privilege to be able to luxuriate, right? It's a privilege to have self-care and be healthy. It's a privilege to eat good food, right?
True.
Because that's not always afforded or provided or accessible. And so when you don't, and it's not that we haven't luxuriate or we don't come from that, we're cut from that rich cloth from Africa, but that has been dismantled to create a new narrative so that way we could see ourselves in the dark light. We can see ourselves of not being able to persevere and be the kings and queens that we are, right? We were stripped of that. So all we could see ourselves is as low, insecure,
broken.
And so it is radical. It is radical to
not the work that you make.
No. And so seeing these images now and like Now things are surfacing. Now we are celebrating because we have to, because it was there. But if we accept those stories and narratives, then we will be that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I think we have a responsibility. I think visualization is powerful in, of manifesting the outcome of your life.
I couldn't agree with you more. That takes me to when I saw your work in the Brooklyn Museum. This is
Mm-hmm.
still years ago, but those walls, the whole
Yeah.
room with these giant images
Yeah.
of colorful, beautiful, proud Black women with big hair,
Big afros and sort of big, just monumental, right?
monumental.
Monumental.
And you have talked about your juxtaposition of classical art with
Mm-hmm.
our art, which keeps a conversation going about power and femininity. So,
Mm-hmm.
in particular, Le Déjeuner, is that what it's
Yeah,
called?
yeah, Le Déjeuner sur le, yeah.
Right. And how that is your twist on Monet's work. Can you talk
Yeah.
about?
Yeah, I think it's important to look at histories, especially within the Western canon, but not only through that. I think it's important to juxtapose the narratives of histories that redefine and reshape and claim space that you don't see out in the world. And for me, it was very important to knowing that these guys were held up such at a high regard and platform within the Western canon and looked to as these iconic images that they created, we start to see ourselves in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Images are powerful, but if we reshape that narrative and claim that space, occupy it because it was worthy of us and we were there, we were just removed from the narrative conversation because those guys painted women of color.
Of
They
course.
painted Algerian women, African women, and Caribbean women. They painted these women, but they were robbed of their own truth by their society by not telling the true stories of their practices
Mm.
because they removed that. It's like, okay, we're going to tell these story. And some of those women that they were painting were not white women. Some of the women they were painting in these luxurious positions were prostitutes.
Ah, right.
But what started happening, you had people of a particular group, echelon, upper echelon, would see them and the sense of desire, and they covered that. So those women started wanting to have their portraits and themselves painted and such. So that's became the new narrative.
Mm.
Yeah.
And it's lost because, as you say, that wasn't something that people necessarily wanted you to know.
They don't. There's a lot they didn't want you to know. They didn't want you to know the relationship of models that a lot of these men had with some of their muses, and some of them were women of color. But if we don't see those images of our histories are full of, you know, lies and untruths and rewritten stories, right? Then that's why it's really important for us to present ourselves in ways where the younger generation find inspiration and light.
Agreed. And as I've said, and I'll say it here, I was so grateful that you talked to my daughter about this. You know, she
Yeah,
in college, her freshman year, trying to
yeah,
understand art
yeah,
and to be able to try to understand art made by a Black woman
yeah,
in something the way we can understand.
yeah,
It's so powerful. You do teach. Not only did you
yeah.
talk,
I enjoy teaching.
yeah.
It's challenging, but I think it allows you to be in the moment and present, and
Mhm.
stay in the conversation with what's happening and what they're thinking about and how they're thinking, but also provide context to them so that they don't get so far removed from the past, that you kind of like anchor them back in.
Mhm.
That's what teachers are. We like, just like, go on, explore, expand your knowledge, but we also have to anchor you back in some of these things that have already existed, and how can you shape them and take that information, throw it against the wall, and create something new. You know what I mean? I don't believe it's about reinventing the wheel. I think it's about like taking what's already there and sort of looking at it from a different perspective, and then coming out with a different output visually and experientially, so people can find something new within it,
Mm, that's
you know? And I think that's how you see and you learn. It's like, okay, I mean, a cup is a cup, but I can make a new cup or a vessel of drinking, right? If you just look at that as how the vessel of a cup has changed and shifted over time.
that's right. And each iteration
Hmm.
unique, even if it's that same thing.
Yeah.
We talked about Monet, but I also want to talk about Romare Bearden. When I
Oh,
your
yes.
work, I think of him. I
And it
think
is him, because I definitely uh, speak about how it's because of him, and because of his own sort of trajectory and journey within his own work, that he was looking at these people and sort of, sort of disrupting it and sort of bringing back Black family life and joy and history in his work, and using collage. That I looked at him is where I discovered Matisse and Monet.
yeah, right.
So it's through his practice and me looking at him, and also me looking at who's he looking at and who he's working from,
Right.
and his experiences and how he's making and thinking about his work, that led me onto these different
Did you have the
journeys.
to meet him?
No, I did not, but I do have the privilege now of being on the board of the Bearden Foundation, so that's being
Fantastic.
in some close proximity. It was a huge, out of all the, you know, boards, and being an advisor and trustee, I think this is my most proud, is being on his.
It's an incredible honor. Hey,
Yeah,
this is Dream Leapers with Harriet Cole, and we are talking to Mickalene Thomas about just how that brain works and the art that she's making. And
yeah,
I'm so excited to talk to you. I want to go a little bit more into Bearden, because the collage,
yeah,
and
yeah,
as sort of taking the body apart, putting it back together, it all it makes you think. It makes you rethink, who are we,
yeah.
and how are we composed, and what do we mean to ourselves and to others. As you are going through your process
Hmm.
as an artist and creating collages, can you talk about your thought process and how you put those pieces together?
Yeah, I mean, I'm having fun. It's about play, really, and it's about looking at the images. And at some point, I have a idea of what I want it to look like in the end, but that shifts, and I just allow the material. I'll cut the figure out, and then I'll try to recreate an environment for that figure that's separate from the environment that it was in,
Mhm.
because I want to push the perspective, flatten certain areas, or maybe change how the if it's a reclined nude, how she's seated, or and add other pattern in it. Just kind of like mix it up, disrupt the visual plane is what I try to do, so that the eye is moving, and the figure becomes like this pausing, safe, comfortable moment, surrounded by all this pattern and sort of like geometric shapes.
Mhm.
That if there's noise in it, because within noise there's also this moment of calmness, and that's where I place onto the figure, is that moment of resting, you
Mhm.
know of looking. And that's why often in the past she's not fully collaged, or I'm not really interested in that, like, sort of, disrupting how the figure looks, but I'm interested in adding other formal aspects to layering how she looks in different space.
Mm.
Maybe her shoulders like this, but it looks kind of angular that way to show a particular movement, you know, for her. Um, and, you know, I usually would, collage for me is a way of making sense of my compositions and drawing, because I'll make a collage, more than one collage of the same image.
Mm.
Um, because it's like telling the story or trying to convey, is it believable? Is this something in here that makes sense? Can someone respond to it? Does the color balance work? You know, is there too much of one thing happening versus the other? And then I tried, once I do make the collage, I visualize the scale of the possibility of what this image could look like. And one of the reasons why I really like working large, because I like for the viewer to feel like they're walking into and they're right there with the figure, as if they're that person's in front of them.
Mm.
Feeling the monumentality, feeling the gaze, feeling her joy, and where they can't escape her,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Cannot. You feel enveloped and welcome.
Yes. It's just like being
And
consumed and
power.
fully engaged,
Yeah.
you know?
Definitely feel her power. What's next, Mickalene? I mean, you have shows right now in multiple places.
Oh my gosh, I have so much. This is a powerful, incredible, rewarding year.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I have a couple of honors. I'm being honored by the New Museum. I'm being honored by Project for Empty Space for the Bad as Woman Award
Mm.
for my Pratt Forward Foundation. And I am also being honored at Gordon Parks, you know, this year. And then on top of that, my touring show, All About Love, starts at the Broad, then it goes to the Barnes, then it goes to the Hayward, and then it goes to Abertoir in France. The Hayward is in London. And then
And
I believe it comes back and goes to Akron.
when does it start?
It starts in May 22, 2004, this year. And then on top of that, I'm doing some other projects that are going to launch, and some editorials about to drop.
That's
So it's been exciting. I mean, in some ways, it's been very overwhelming, but it's also just been really, you know, you make it, it makes you feel alive. I like being busy, but I also learned to say no. So even though for some it might seem like, oh, she's doing too much, and I often kind of like, what is doing too much? How about just doing what you love?
mm. Tell me, as we just have a moment left, but
Mhm.
as your daughter, you have a 10-year-old who gets to see her mama just living her best life,
And
making
she knows how to put her mama in her place. So
what what
easily.
does she say about having you as her mom with all these creations that you're making?
I don't think she fully recognizes it yet. I think she has embraced it to a level, but she does when she hears from her peers when they're like, "Oh, my aunt, I went to my aunt house and they had a book of your mom's, you know, or I went to a museum and I think we saw your mom's art." Then she's like, "Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm, yeah, that's right." But other than that, she knows how to bring me back. She's speak about an anchor. She knows how to allow, if there's any inflation or floating, uh,
She
she
brings
knows
it
how
home.
she knows how to pull on that string and say, let's sit right here. She'll be like, you're not all that, you know.
Well, the best thing is that as she grows older, it's just going to become that much more fun. It's
Yeah, and she's great and she loves it, and she really recognizes the opportunity. She's definitely have a life that I didn't have when I was her age. So I'm really thankful and grateful that I'm able to provide that for her. To provide her experiences that I had to learn and develop at, in my 20s, you know what I mean, that she's experiencing now, which is so
What?
much different, that I didn't start traveling until I started making art and selling art, to be quite honest. I didn't go places.
Well, you're making up for it now.
Oh
Mick,
yeah.
thank you so much for joining us. Dream Leapers is all about inspiring people to leap into their dreams. And I know that listening to you and just
Yeah.
having a window into your world is making people feel that much more positive about their own. So thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for your, you know, undeniable support as always. I
Absolutely.
appreciate you, and thank you to Dream Leapers, and we'll talk soon.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank
Thank
you
you.
all of you for tuning in to Dream Leapers. Check out Mickalene Thomas's website, MickaleneThomas.com. Follow her. She's doing all kinds of great things. You want to see all of it. Until next time, have a great day and make it count.